It's Ethan Blake, and you already know if it's on fire, I'm bringing the commentary gasoline. Tonight's episode features another misguided warrior of wokeness who mistook Twitter for a moral compass and walked straight into a wall of facts. I'll break it down with my usual mix of sharp humor and pointed sarcasm and zero patience for mental gymnastics. This isn't therapy. This is satire therapy. Laughter first, logic later. So breathe deep, laugh hard, and let's tear through this mess one ridiculous soundbite at a time.
Was that we had all been told by many of our best prognosticators it was going to be close.
Since joining the race, the vice president has raised an eye-boggling $1 billion.
Call me eyes-boggled.
Comedian and Daily Show host Jon Stewart is on a mission to expose the hypocrisy and double standards that have defined the Democrats and their media allies, especially MSNBC, over the past decade. Previously, we highlighted how MSNBC turned a doctored photo of Joe Biden tied to the back of a pickup truck into a full-blown scandal, blowing a non-issue into national outrage. Today, we're taking it a step further as Stewart finally calls out MSNBC's dishonesty and reveals how their biased coverage played a major role in the Democrats' defeat in last November's elections. Buckle up. This is going to be one wild ride.
But if you remember, the last time that we spoke, it was midnight on election night. And it seemed even at that moment very clear Donald Trump had won the election in a bit of a thumpening.
Now this is where things get interesting, especially coming from a longtime Democrat sympathizer like Jon Stewart. Before the elections, it was clear to anyone paying attention that Trump was heading toward a wide margin victory. Yet, the Democrats and their loyal allies at MSNBC were busy spinning fairy tales about a Kamala Harris win. They clung to preferred narratives, ignored polling data, and dismissed the growing public frustration. Even now, some Democrats remain in denial, refusing to admit that Trump's win was a landslide, despite the numbers, the momentum, and the national mood all pointing in that direction. It's cognitive dissonance at its peak, and Stewart finally decided he couldn't ignore it any longer.
Was that we had all been told by many of our best prognosticators it was going to be close.
I clearly remember watching MSNBC confidently project a Kamala Harris victory night after night. The network paraded a lineup of so-called election experts and political analysts who praised Harris like a well-rehearsed choir. They cited selective polls from Emerson, Morning Consult, and even MSNBC's own in-house surveys, all claiming she was poised to edge out Trump by the narrowest of margins. Despite growing evidence to the contrary, they pushed the narrative that a Harris win was inevitable. These analysts didn't just speculate, they made firm assurances, feeding viewers false hope and setting them up for massive disappointment. The disconnect between their predictions and reality was staggering, and the fallout was predictable.
We ran the results in the computer 100,000 times. She won 50,001. He won 40,099, 99, but in this coin flip country, I was confident because the Democrats had a secret weapon.
It reached a point where even the most skeptical viewers began to buy into MSNBC's narrative, simply due to the relentless stream of experts paraded across the screen daily. The volume was overwhelming. Former campaign strategists, polling analysts, Ivy League professors, each confidently echoing the same rehearsed talking points. According to them, the Democrats had a secret weapon, a game changer that would bring the Trump train to a grinding halt. They never quite explained what this supposed weapon was, but the mystery alone kept audiences hooked and hopeful. The hype was constant, the optimism manufactured, and the messaging tightly controlled. So what exactly was this secret weapon? Let's find out.
Since joining the race, the vice president has raised an eye-boggling $1 billion.
Call me eyes-boggled.
Exactly. Remember when MSNBC couldn't stop bragging about the Democrats' record-breaking fundraising haul? They ran endless segments claiming the party had raised enough money to win elections anywhere, as if cash alone guaranteed victory. They highlighted numbers from Act Blue, boasting about massive war chests for Kamala Harris, the DNC, and key Senate races. Anchors breathlessly cited figures like $100 million raised in just a few weeks, calling it unprecedented and game-changing. The message was loud and clear. With this much money, losing wasn't even on the table. Spoiler alert, it was. Turns out no amount of money can sell a message voters simply aren't buying. The flashy totals couldn't mask the lack of substance. So it begs the obvious question, where did all that money go?
A lot of that money went to, how the did they just text me, I'm in the tub? I don't even have my phone. It just came through the water.
Okay, so I'm not exactly a die-hard fan of Jon Stewart's comedy, but I've got to admit, this part was hilarious. Hands up if you were one of the millions bombarded with those non-stop, borderline desperate text messages from the Democrats. Chip in $5 to save democracy? Sound familiar? They came at all hours, in the most random situations. Drop a comment and tell me the weirdest or most inconvenient moment you got one. I got one during a funeral, no joke. Another popped up while I was ordering tacos. It was like they had a sixth sense for choosing the worst possible moment. And just when we thought the Democratic campaign couldn't get any more ridiculous, they dropped this bomb.
The Harris campaign has a massive ground game, 50,000 volunteers.
With volunteers knocking on 5 million doors in Pennsylvania alone.
This is the first time some Democrats have told me they've ever heard of people knocking on the same doors.
50,000 volunteers knocking on 5 million doors just to drag Kamala Harris across the finish line. That's not just dedication, it borders on madness. Sure, I knew they had folks canvassing, but I didn't realize they were out there trying to out-hustle the Jehovah's Witnesses. At least the Jehovah's Witnesses show up with a pamphlet and a polite smile. These campaigners came armed with clipboards, QR codes, and a laser-focused mission to save democracy. Some neighborhoods reported being visited 3 times in a single week. It got so overwhelming that people started pretending they weren't home just to dodge another awkward doorstep pitch about Kamala's vision for America. It wasn't a campaign anymore. It felt more like a coordinated invasion of personal space. And in the end, it still wasn't enough to deliver a win. Now let's hear what Jon Stewart has to say about the aftermath.
Even though everyone from vacuum salesmen to Jehovah's Witnesses know that's a losing strategy. In fact, they've known that for decades. Let's just spend $250 million on it.
To his credit, Jon Stewart calls it exactly how he sees it, and this time he didn't hold back. Spending millions just to bombard people and invade their privacy wasn't exactly the Democrats' brightest idea. In fact, according to Stewart, this kind of hyper-aggressive outreach has always been a losing strategy. Here's the kicker. Democrats have known this for decades. It's not some new revelation. Focus groups, internal memos, and post-campaign analyses have all pointed to the same thing. Relentless canvassing, nonstop texts, and endless email spam don't inspire voters, they exhaust them. Yet instead of learning from those lessons, they cranked up the volume. Stewart's take is blunt, but accurate. When you treat voters like targets instead of people, don't be shocked when they stop listening. And that wasn't the only reason voters tuned out. Jon Stewart had even more to expose, and what he reveals next digs even deeper.
Democracy and freedom are on the ballot.
Our democracy is on the line.
We have to protect democracy.
We have to work even harder to make sure that we defend our democracy.
We don't get to choose when we're asked to defend democracy. We just have to do it.
MSNBC wouldn't stop pushing the narrative that Donald Trump was a fascist determined to destroy democracy as we know it. Night after night, they hammered home the idea that the only way to save the republic was to vote against him. Urgently, decisively, and in massive numbers. The hashtag number, sign, democracy now was everywhere, plastered across social media, campaign ads, and echoed in nearly every primetime segment. True to form, MSNBC leaned into their signature style, painting an apocalyptic picture of doom and gloom, all to stir up public fear and rally sympathy for the Democrats. They framed the election as a last stand, a fight for the very soul of the nation. But over time, it stopped feeling like journalism and started to resemble pure political theater. And many Americans, worn out by the fear tactics, saw right through it.
And I'm glad to say Democrats did protect democracy. just for the other side. Because when all is said and done, we had a free and fair election.
Yep, in a hilarious twist of fate, the Democrats poured their hearts, wallets, and airwaves into saving democracy, only for Republicans to end up benefiting from it. Think about that for a moment. They spent millions, ran nonstop campaigns, and saturated every media outlet with panic-fueled messaging, all under the banner of protecting the Republic. And yet, now it's Donald Trump who's reaping the rewards of all that effort. It's almost poetic. The very democratic system they claimed he was trying to destroy is now operating in his favor, ironically thanks to their own over-the-top theatrics. At this point, you could even argue that MSNBC is helping Trump more than his own campaign. Every exaggerated report, every apocalyptic prediction only reinforces his narrative and strengthens his position, proving Jon Stewart's point in the process.
In which the Democrats had been prepared for almost every scenario but one.
The Harris campaign has built probably the most sophisticated, robust, impressive voter protection program in the history of presidential politics.
MSNBC kept assuring viewers that this was the election where Democrats were the most prepared, organized, and energized. But in all their relentless cheerleading, they overlooked one critical detail, reminding the party to actually check all the boxes, both literally and figuratively. While MSNBC hyped up record-breaking enthusiasm and sang the praises of Democratic momentum, they completely neglected their core journalistic responsibility, providing grounded analysis and holding their side accountable. Instead of asking tough questions or offering balanced insight, they acted as hype men, amplifying the narrative without examining the cracks beneath it. They failed to scrutinize campaign strategies, ignored warning signs on voter turnout, and brushed aside internal party unrest. In doing so, they left Democrats marching blind into a storm they never saw coming, because the media told them everything was under control.
We got the lawyers, we got the protecting the... What do we got? We got... Jimmy, did you bring the voters? Oh, I thought you were bringing the voters. I brought the hate has no home here posters. Nobody brought the voters? Where are the voters?
The Democrats did everything right, at least on paper. They raised historic sums, mobilized an army of volunteers, dominated media coverage, and built an impressive ground game. But they missed the most crucial element, delivering a message that actually connected with everyday Americans. Instead, they leaned harder into divisive woke rhetoric, identity politics, and virtue-signaling buzzwords, language that alienated more voters than it inspired. Their glaring disconnect from real, pressing concerns like inflation, public safety, and border control ultimately cost them dearly. Had they devoted even half that energy to crafting a unifying, relatable, and clear message, we might be talking about a completely different result today. But instead of listening to the electorate, they chose to lecture, and voters answered the only way they could, at the ballot box.
It turns out the election was stolen by more people voting for Donald Trump. It's quite a caper. Ocean's 74 million.
Yeah, in the end it was Donald Trump who delivered the Democrats a masterclass in how to win by handing them a defeat so staggering it shook their entire strategy to its foundation. But let's be honest, the network that failed them most wasn't Fox News or any conservative outlet, it was MSNBC, supposedly their biggest ally. MSNBC built an echo chamber so dense with false confidence and partisan spin that it blinded the Democratic base to what was really happening on the ground. Rather than provide honest, critical analysis, they fed the public a non-stop stream of wishful thinking, inflated polls, and overhyped narratives. In doing so, they didn't just mislead their viewers, they misled an entire political movement into a losing game plan. And now, after the dust has settled, they're scrambling to rewrite the story, hoping no one notices the damage they helped create.
So now, as many on the left fear the future, as they should, many others rue the past.
Joe Biden should have dropped out earlier.
There should have been an open primary.
Now the Democrats are doing what they do best after a major loss, pointing fingers. The blame game is in full swing. Some are adamant that Joe Biden should have stepped aside much earlier, giving the party time to regroup and introduce a fresh face. Others argue Kamala Harris should never have been the nominee at all, citing her chronically low approval ratings and failure to connect with swing state voters. Behind the scenes, it's chaos, strategists, donors, and party officials scrambling to spin the loss, rewrite the narrative, and save face. Instead of reflecting and learning from their mistakes, they're busy tearing each other apart. It's a full-blown post-election meltdown, one that Jon Stewart ironically predicted with brutal clarity. MSNBC played a key role in this disaster, proving itself a hub of partisan hypocrisy. They relentlessly urged Democrats forward, fueling delusions and hyping Harris as if she were a political powerhouse. Whether they genuinely believed she could win or just played along to boost ratings is unclear, but it's likely they saw the writing on the wall and chose to sell hope anyway. Because let's face it, false optimism sells. It keeps viewers hooked, ad revenue flowing, and reality at bay. Instead of offering honest assessments or critical journalism, MSNBC played the role of enabler, not reporter. And when reality hit, they simply pivoted, pretending they hadn't spent months feeding the public political fairy tales. That wraps up today's video. If you appreciated our honest take, don't forget to like and subscribe for more no-nonsense commentary. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you